Have you ever stared at your phone waiting for a message that never comes? You send her a text. It shows read, or maybe it doesn't. But either way, silence stretches out. Minutes turn into hours. Hours turn into days. And that silence, it's not empty. It's loud. It echoes. It plays on repeat in your mind like a song stuck on loop. Did I mess up? Was I too much? Has she already moved on? That ache of not knowing it's sharp. It creeps in when you least expect it. Every buzz, every notification that isn't from her feels like a punch to the gut. I know that space well. I've been there. But what if I told you that her silence isn't a blank space to fear, but a message in itself? What if her lack of response is actually more revealing than anything she could have said? You see, when someone goes silent, they're still speaking, just in a language most people never learn to understand. In her quiet, she might be showing you where she stands, and even showing you something about yourself. Now, let me be clear, we're not doing the usual dating guru nonsense here. I'm not going to say play it cool or just give her space and send you off confused. No way. We're going deeper, much deeper. In this video, we're decoding silence on every level, emotionally, mentally, even spiritually. We're looking at it through the lens of Stoic philosophy, grounded psychology, and real human behavior. This isn't about tips and tricks, it's about truth. Because once you understand what silence actually means, you stop feeling powerless. You stop reacting from fear. Instead, you learn how to respond from clarity and confidence. By the end of this video, you won't just be less confused, you'll be calm, composed, and in control. Because here's the real shift when you understand the power of silence. You stop chasing noise. Ready to begin? Let's dive in. Point 1. Silence doesn't always mean something's wrong. Here's a big mistake guys make right off the bat. They assume silence equals rejection. She's not texting back, so that must mean she's done right. Not necessarily. In fact, a lot of times her silence isn't about you at all. It's about her. She might be going through something, feeling overwhelmed, burned out, or simply needing space to process. Some women need to sit with their thoughts before they speak them. In that pause. That's not a red flag, it's human. Unlike guys who often feel pressure to reply fast and directly, many women communicate in waves, not clocks. Their rhythm isn't always predictable. She might go quiet because she's under stress, unsure of what she's feeling, or ironically because she likes you and doesn't want to mess things up by coming on too strong. We live in a world of instant messages, read receipts, and dopamine hits. But relationships, especially the meaningful kind, don't always sync with that rhythm. Sometimes silence is just the space where feelings mature. There's also a deeper psychological layer here. Linguist Deborah Tannen and others have shown how men often approach communication as a transaction, something to solve or complete. Meanwhile, women tend to see it as relational, something to experience, feel, and navigate. So when she doesn't text back, it might not mean she's ignoring you. It could mean she's processing you emotionally, thoughtfully, even protectively. And that's something worth understanding, not fearing. So picking up from where we left off, sometimes silence isn't rejection, it's just reality. When a woman pulls back or doesn't reply, it might not be because she's ghosting you or losing interest. More often than not, it's because she simply doesn't have the emotional bandwidth to engage in that moment. She's not being cold, she's being human. But here's where things get tricky. As men, we're wired to see silence as a red flag. No reply. We instantly jump to the worst-case scenario. That mental gap, the unknown, it feels like failure. And that fear, it kicks our brain into overdrive. So we react. We overtext. We chase. We obsess over what we might have done wrong. We start trying to fix something that was never even broken in the first place. It's like trying to repair a mirror that was only reflecting our own panic. Before you let your mind spiral, pause. Breathe. That's silence. It might not be a sign that something's wrong at all. Sometimes the most powerful move isn't to decode her, it's to understand yourself, to notice your own instinct to panic when clarity isn't handed to you. Because the real lesson here, not every unanswered message is a personal rejection. Sometimes it's just a moment of quiet. 2. The Stoic response to uncertainty. Now this is where everything starts to shift. When she doesn't reply, most guys lose it. They replay every word, every emoji, every pause in the last conversation, looking for clues. Their phone becomes a trap, a ticking clock of insecurity. But here's where Stoicism draws the line between the reactive and the resilient. Stoic philosophy teaches us one of the most empowering truths: you can't control her actions, but you can control your reaction. As Epictetus said, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. And in that silence, you're given a choice. You can spiral or you can center. You can let anxiety write your next message, or you can breathe, stay grounded, and choose stillness. Now, don't confuse that with apathy. This isn't about pretending not to care. It's about not letting someone else's silence disturb your own inner peace. That's presence. That's power. Let's be honest, most of us were never taught how to just sit with uncertainty. We were trained to chase, fix, solve, do. But Stoicism offers another path. The Stoic man doesn't chase answers that aren't being offered. He doesn't see silence as a riddle to decode. He sees it as a moment to return to himself. And that reframe, it changes everything. Instead of thinking she's done with me or I'm not enough, the Stoic says, this is a moment to build myself. It might sound poetic, but it's incredibly practical. Because in that pause where most guys lose themselves, you sharpen your mind. You train your emotions. You build resilience. You stop being the man who needs constant replies to feel seen and become the man who is steady, grounded, and strong no matter who enters or exits his life. That's not just attractive. That's unshakable. So if composure is your foundation, then her silence. It's often the pressure test. 3. Her silence often tests your emotional strength. Here's something that slips under most men's radar. Her silence might not be a rejection. It might be a test. Not a game, not manipulation, but a deeply human, almost instinctive way of gauging something real. Women don't always test with words. In fact, most of the time, it's through subtle behaviors: pulling back, going quiet, slowing down communication. These aren't random. They're signals. They're quiet questions that sound like, can you handle this? Can you stay calm when the volume drops? It's what some call a comfort test. And it's not really about how she feels in the moment. It's about who you become when things feel uncertain. She's watching to see if you'll lose your balance the second she steps back. Will you get clingy? Will you chase? Will you start to unravel emotionally just because the validation stopped flowing? And if you do, she learns something, not just about the situation, but about you. Now, this doesn't mean women are playing games or trying to mess with your head. Far from it. It means they're biologically wired to seek emotional security. And one way they gauge that is through your reactions to uncertainty. In the world of evolutionary psychology, these kinds of tests aren't acts of cruelty, they're survival instincts. Historically, women have always been drawn to strength. But let's redefine that. Strength doesn't just mean muscles, money, or status. Real strength, especially in a relationship, looks like emotional stability. So when her silence sends you into a tailspin, when you start spiraling and overreacting, it doesn't communicate strength. It signals insecurity, instability. But when you stay grounded, calm, clear, self-assured, you're sending an entirely different message. One that says, I'm safe, I'm solid, I'm okay in my own skin. And that's powerful, that's attractive, that's the kind of energy that draws people in. The Stoic man doesn't fall apart when attention is withheld. He doesn't beg for external validation, he is the validation. And that quiet confidence. It echoes louder than any desperate text ever could. 4, if you chase her, silence, you lose. Now here's the paradox most guys don't see coming. The more you chase her silence, the more you guarantee it continues. It's brutal, but it's real. When you try to pull her back in with double texts, over-explaining apology after apology, or those just checking in messages, you're not reconnecting. You're repelling. Why? Because something subtle but important has shifted. You've moved from being a grounded man to someone seeking reassurance, from strength to neediness. And nothing kills attraction faster than desperation. There's a name for this in psychology, it's called reactance. When someone feels their personal freedom is being threatened even slightly, their instinct is to pull away. So if she's already creating distance and you rush in to close that space, you don't pull her closer. You smother her. You take away the freedom she subconsciously needed. And in doing so, you lose your center and her interest. So once you start chasing her silence, you not only lose your balance, you start losing the dynamic too. Because here's what happens next. By chasing you quietly, hand her the emotional power. Now you're sitting there, phone in hand, treating her reply like it's a reward. You wait, you hope, you overthink, and without even realizing it, the scales tip. That energy, it's no longer magnetic, it's anxious. And even if she's not fully aware of what's happening, she feels it. Suddenly the vibe shifts from confidence to craving. It's the difference between a man who calmly says, "I'll be here if and when you're ready," versus the one silently pleading, "Please, just notice me." One stands tall, the other fades fast. So when you feel that temptation bubbling up to close the distance, to bridge the silence, to do something, don't. Let her feel your absence. Not as a punishment, not as a cold move, but as an opening. Give her the space to wonder, to miss, to choose. And in that space, something powerful happens. You reclaim your value not by chasing it, but by staying still. You don't have to say a word. In fact, sometimes silence is the strongest thing you can say. 5. What you should do instead. So now you're probably asking, okay, then what should I do when she goes quiet? The answer: you turn your attention to the one thing you've always had control over: yourself. But this isn't passive. This isn't sitting around saying whatever happens, happens while secretly checking her Instagram every 10 minutes. This is active, intentional. This is where most men mess up. They wait in limbo, overanalyzing the last message, tracking her online status, scrolling through old texts like they're sacred scripture. But that mental energy, that obsessive loop, it's not just unattractive, it's exhausting. So flip the script. Instead of asking, "Why hasn't she messaged me?" ask, "Where have I been neglecting myself?" Because let's be real, 9 times out of 10, her silence is pointing you straight back to your own unfinished business. Your goals, your discipline, your growth. And no, this isn't some cheesy Instagram quote telling you to just focus on you, bro. It's a hard truth. When you redirect your energy inward, everything shifts. You stop being the guy who's waiting and become the man who's moving. Write down what you're feeling, not just to vent, but to clarify. Hit the gym, not to escape the moment, but to harness it. Build something. Learn something. Do the thing you've been putting off. Expand your world beyond her. Because here's the deal: the more full and focused your life becomes, the less power a delayed message has over you. You're no longer in emotional limbo. You're in motion. And motion creates momentum. Momentum creates confidence. And confidence, that's what draws people in. Not the man who waits around for a reply, but the man who moves forward whether that reply comes or not. That's not a strategy. That's a lifestyle. And she'll feel that shift even if you never say a word. So you've stayed grounded. You've chosen stillness over reaction. But what if after all that she reaches out? 6. If she returns, you're still in control. Let's say the silence ends. Out of nowhere, she texts you. Maybe it's a simple, "Hey, how have you been?" casual, almost like nothing ever happened. Maybe it's a meme or some random comment that doesn't even acknowledge the gap in communication. And this is where most guys mess up. Some respond with instant relief, like they'd been waiting by the phone the whole time. Others swing to the opposite extreme, bitter, passive-aggressive, trying to guilt trip her for going quiet. But if you've been doing the real work during the silence, focusing on yourself, growing, realigning, then her message doesn't define anything for you. You're not waiting on it. You're not desperate for it. You're choosing how to respond. And that's the power shift. You're not punishing her, but you're also not rewarding inconsistency. You're simply continuing to honor the self-respect you built while she was gone. That means your response comes from a place of calm, maturity, and boundaries. You don't ignore her unless you've decided clearly and confidently that she no longer fits the life you're building. But you also don't throw away your emotional grounding just because she reappeared. A simple, steady response like, "Hey, good to hear from you. I've been keeping busy with some new things." That's more than enough. It says I've moved forward. It says I'm good with or without you. It puts the ball in her court without pressure, without neediness. And most importantly, it communicates something rare. You no longer need her to feel okay. That's magnetic. That's uncommon. Because most people expect their absence to leave a mark, some emptiness, some regret. But when you respond with peace, with groundedness, that's when they really start to wonder, what did I lose? So next time she pulls away, goes quiet, or doesn't reply, don't let your mind spiral. Let it be a moment of truth. Not about her, but about you. Because silence doesn't mean she's taken your power. It means you've been handed a mirror. And in that stillness, you get to discover where your real power lives. Not in clever replies, not in perfectly timed responses, but in how steady you stay when the world gives you nothing to hold on to. Power is in movement. Power is in mission. Power is in staying grounded when validation is nowhere to be found. That's what Stoicism teaches. Not to avoid emotions, but to master them. To look into the silence and ask yourself, am I a man who waits to feel worthy? Or a man who already is? Let her wonder. Let her feel your absence. Not as a strategy, not to play games, but because you've outgrown the need to chase crumbs of attention. You're not angry, you're not bitter, you're centered. And the more time you spend in that calm, deliberate space, the more what's meant for you starts finding its way to you. Not because you begged, but because you became the kind of man who naturally attracts it. So stay grounded, stay focused, stay stoic. And if this message hit home, if it reminded you of the man you've always been deep down, then you already know the next step. Keep growing. And I'll see you in the next one.